Hi everyone, you're watching the Virtual Amicus and I'm Jay Ludha. Well, who is a life coach? What is the purpose of life coaching? How important and relevant are these services of a life coach in the legal profession? It is unfortunate that we are in 2024, but still there is no discussion regarding mental health of lawyers. And unfortunately, till date, it exists to be a taboo. So now the time has come to break the silence and talking about mental health in particular. So, joining us today on the virtual amicus is a renowned and a highly respected legal advisor and transactional lawyer who is also a life coach. So, in conversation with Miss Priyanka Variath, and the topic for today's discussion would be on law and life, achieving holistic well-being. So, just to give you all a brief introduction about our amicus for today's session, she's an alumna of GLC Mumbai who has a decade over experience in litigation, experiencing the classic symptoms of lost lawyer stress and burnout that led her to dive deep into personal development and become trained in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, organizational development coaching, and life coaching. Deeply resonating with this field as a purpose, she transitioned into life coaching with a focus on emotional well-being. This is where she specializes also, emotional wellness, while still continuing as a legal advisor and transactional lawyer. As a life coach, she facilitates professionals, especially lawyers, to mitigate chronic stress and anxiety. Her unique perspective as both a lawyer and a coach has transformed the lives of many legal professionals, empowering them to achieve greater emotional well being and fulfillment. So, thank you so much, ma'am, for readily saying yes, for taking out time. I know it's a Sunday morning. This is the only day that you get, and we've spoiled all your Sunday plans. Anything that you wish to say before we start with our Q&A segment?
Yes, thank you so much, Jay, for a very warm introduction. And it's my pleasure to be here on a Sunday, especially on such a popular platform. And I'm very happy to share whatever I know about lawyer well-being and how coaching can help with it. So very happy to be here and thank you for the invite. So Jay, to begin with your very first question, am I audible?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
The very first question, Jay, who is a life coach? Okay. In very simple terms, a life coach is a professional whom you have employed to help you achieve your goals. So, a professional who is employed for your transformation is a coach. Now, a very natural question may be why do you need a coach? Let's say, Jay, you buy a washing machine or an appliance or a gadget. You get a user manual on how to use it and optimize its purpose, right? Did you have a manual in terms of how to use your mind and emotions? None of us have a manual in terms of how to use and optimize our inner resources. And that's where a coach's role comes into play. A coach is somebody who can help you realize what is really holding you back. Now, for most of us, the only user manual feature we know is think positive thoughts. Now, if that was the only missing piece in the puzzle, most people would keep thinking positive thoughts and the rates of depression and anxiety wouldn't be so high, right? And this sounds very simple, think positive thoughts. But even that is a very difficult step for most people. Why? Because we have a lot of subconscious limiting beliefs, most of us do, about who we are and what we're capable of creating and achieving, perhaps because of our difficult life experiences. And this is unresolved at the level of your subconscious mind. Now, a coach is somebody who will help you discover what is truly holding you back and help you get to where you wish to be and create the accountability that you need to create the change that you so wish for. Now, if you can do this by yourself, you don't need a coach. But for most of us, it is quite a difficult process because the evolutionary brain is not naturally designed to uplift you to your highest levels of success or fulfillment. And the statistics would prove that, right? How many people do you know who are at the top of the game? Very few. So when you work with a coach who gives you a safe space to openly address your challenges, who shares with you the tools to cope with emotional difficulties, who makes you accountable for creating the change that you are committing to, your growth rate accelerates and you can thrive at a much faster pace than you would if you were by yourself. And that explains why coaching is a $1 billion industry today. And as far as I'm personally concerned, there was a time where even I had hit the rock bottom in life. And I found my own coaches. And then that work interested me so much that I got professionally certified in a lot of personal development courses. And now I feel very called and compelled to take forward this work, which explains why I'm continuing as a lawyer and coach. Now, the second part of your question, Jay, how is this relevant for legal professionals, especially? Now, I'm not getting into the global statistics about the mental health concerns of lawyers. The internet is replete with this information, and it's there for anybody who would like to check it out, right? The fact is that it exists, and it exists in a very rampant scale. So, when the well being of a profession is so low, then inversely proportionate is the need for a coach for those professionals. So, that itself establishes why coaching is so important for lawyers. And just for the records, to be really clear, when we are talking about stress, I have to clarify what kind of stress are we trying to dilute, because lawyers love stress, right? We're so identified with being these stressful, high performing professionals. So there are two kinds of stress. It's called the eustress and distress. Eustress is a kind that will pump you up to do great work. It'll give you the kick that you need to make an impactful argument in court, or give you the adrenaline rush that you need to complete your work within time deadlines. And it passes after the event. So eustress is great, and we're clearly not talking about diluting that. What we're talking about is diluting chronic stress, which is prolonged stress, which will in turn impact your health, mood, behaviors, and even motivation. So to begin with, we've got to be really clear that what we're talking about is distress and not navigating through eustress. Now, there are a few very subtle components of the lawyer distress. Let's talk about how the system is in India. We have an adversarial system of litigation, which ensures that every lawyer is continuously put in a state of competition rather than collaboration for justice. And every client would want that their case wins. But for a lawyer, what does that translate into? It translates into hundreds of lawyers expecting that all their cases be won and expecting nothing less but the very best from you at any given point in time. And this naturally translates into lawyers being high end perfectionists, them themselves believing that there is absolutely no scope for even minimal human error of any kind. That in turn translates into a highly critical work environment, whether it's the corporate firm or litigation, where doing your absolute best and being flawless is normal. But you make a few errors, and then that's like a death knell being given to you, right? You just know it. You just know it from the way the seniors and your associates approach you. So the system inherently is extremely stress inducing. Now let's look at how the adversarial system or working in the adversarial system plays out in your intimate relationships. The lawyer brain is so trained to look for loopholes and have a huge urge to win arguments. And how do you think that would translate into your intimate relationships? Naturally, there is a lack of patience, there is emotional disconnection, and eventual emotional derailment. And a lot of women may be able to relate to this. Sometimes when it's that phase where you're looking for marriage proposal, some people categorically say no lawyers. And though it may seem quite illogical, it could be this is where they're coming from. You're so used to winning arguments, and that's in your blood, right? So to truly be present to the requirements of a relationship could be hard when you're constantly in that adversarial system of work. Another point is something called vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue. Let me explain. Now, the identity of a lawyer and a client can become pretty enmeshed during the course of litigation because the lawyer is the client's voice in court. So it could start off with an argument like, "My lord, the orders have been passed in violation of my client's rights. The order ought to be dismissed," for example. And in time, this will translate into, "My lord, my rights have been violated. I haven't been heard. The order is passed in violation of my fundamental right." So the lawyer literally starts using "I" to represent the client. And neurolinguistics is a beautiful field that explains or that talks about the impact of language in creating emotion. And in no time, this grows beyond semantics, and lawyers start feeling the emotional states of their clients in the pursuit of justice. And this is what we call vicarious trauma, because literally, subconsciously, the lawyer is living the same anguish as what the client is experiencing. And this is what we call compassion fatigue. But tell me, are law schools training lawyers to handle this? It's a big no. And next is another personality trait called people pleasing. Now, when lawyers are mostly in the service industry, especially lawyers who are in litigation, professionally, there's a huge requirement to tune into the needs of the other, whether it's the client, whether it's your boss, whether it's your superior, right? And people pleasing is defined as a behavioral or thinking pattern where there is so much focus on the other to the self neglect and detriment of your own self. And this is highly lauded in the profession. You know, you're available for client calls at any point in day or night. Your senior gives you work, and even if it's a half an hour deadline, you're so called to finish it because you're not at all tuned into your needs. The profession is constantly training you to be outwardly focused. And would you believe it, Jay? There is actually a lawyer assistance program by the DC Bar in the District of Columbia that professionally trains lawyers to get past people pleasing. So let's sink that in for a moment, like literally a lawyer assistance program to help them get past people pleasing. So, how chronic would it actually be in the industry? Because this is what leads to burnout. So, most lawyers are doing a great job with wanting to be in the highest service for their clients or bosses or whoever's in charge of the emotional destiny. But if left unchecked, it could lead to a huge burnout. Another point is most lawyers, the extremely fierce and competitive kinds, being atypical type A personality. Now, there are enough studies to show that no one person is one personality type at all times. We are an amalgamation of so many personality traits. But we could have a dominance of certain personality traits. And most of these highly competitive lawyers are a type A personality, where they emphasize on overachieving rather than self care. And that's again great. Professionally, it'll keep pushing you to do more. But what happens to a type A is you're constantly in a race that you can never win. You're after one goal after another, whereby you don't even stop to acknowledge what is it that you've achieved thus far. Any goal will give you achieving any goal will give you a 2 second dopamine rush, and then you're after the next goal. And when this pattern keeps happening, when you're never stopping to acknowledge how far you've already come, that can lead to a lot of unfulfillment in your internal world. And no matter what your achievements look like on paper, deep down, you're very hollow and lifeless. Right? So these are some of those very specific lawyer stress, de-stress concerning litigating lawyers. If we're talking about the corporate lawyers, of course, we know the building structure has made work-life balance a mystical, surreal, utopian dream, where the culture is so focused on just how well you're doing in law office, right? So I think most lawyers in even the corporate, they struggle with knowing who they are beyond being a lawyer. And when that's the kind of work culture they are in, they have to really put an extra effort to then figure out who they are and pursue what else kicks them in life. So clearly explains when you have a coach, then you're able to work through so many of these emotionally challenging intricacies and come to a solution that's optimum for you. So yeah, Jay, that's enough overview. I mean, there's so much more to discuss, but the paucity of time, I'm just condensing and highlighting some of the most relevant takeaways for lawyers.
Well, really grateful for all the valuable insights that you shared. It's a very important topic. Now, what is important is first to identify what problems are there and the lawyer encounters on a daily basis. So, how, according to you, if you could share certain valuable tips to help the legal professionals battle it out, what effective measures can they engage, adopt? How can they hire services of a life coach if all they require one?
Sure. So, in terms of hiring the service of a life coach, it's like how you would hire the service of any other profession, right? You'd look for the kind of coach you'd want to work with, and you can approach them through the system that is in place. In terms of tips for lawyers, yeah, I think it's a very relevant question. And there are three things I would like to share in response to this question. First is there is no one standard prescription for stress management, right? Though people say meditation, exercise, walking, and doing cardio, etc., etc.
No straight jacket for me. Yeah.
Yeah, there is no one size fits all approach for lawyers because each person is their own unique person, and what works for one may not work for another. So, what I think the biggest mistake lawyers are doing is normalizing their stress. They look around and they tell themselves, oh, everybody is in a bad place and everybody is in poor mental health, so this is completely okay. If you're going to do that, you will never come to what really is stressing you out. So I think every lawyer is very important, whether you're another professional, especially for lawyers, to really investigate into what might be the root cause of your stressors and then look at a solution that is most unique and effective for you. You know, there's this analogy when sometimes there's a power cut. You step out and then you see everybody's house is also in darkness. And then you're telling yourself, ah, now that's okay. So that's exactly what happens with lawyer stress. You look around and everybody's in darkness and you tell yourself that it's okay. But instead, you should be focusing on your own house, your own building, and asking yourself, how can I bring back the light? It doesn't matter if the others are in darkness too. It's important to acknowledge that I am in a place that I wouldn't like to be in. And then see what comes up in the process of self discovery and do what it takes to pursue what comes up as a solution for your own stress management, right? Secondly, Jay, I think most lawyers have a very highly critical inner voice, and which is again very closely tied to the type A personality that we spoke of. The focus is so much on the achievement and going on pursuing one goal after another that they believe the path to success is only to keep chasing one goal after another, never acknowledging or validating what you've already done. So, a lot of lawyers suffer from self deprecation. And what I want to tell lawyers is to check in with yourself if you suffer, I must use the word suffer, from a highly critical inner voice. And if you do, then you've got to take the effort to start speaking to yourself with more kindness and compassion, acknowledging yourself a little more, appreciating your own self for those little victories in litigation or your corporate field. And dear lawyers, that will not make you more complacent. It will only prevent your inner world from cracking and collapsing. And the third tip, Jay, would be for lawyers to engage in activities that build more body awareness. Because when we talk about chronic stress, the manifestation is most in the body. We generally only tend to intellectualize our emotions and we talk about our emotions, but we don't quite feel it. So when you talk about chronic stress, the manifestations could sometimes be in the form of digestive issues. It could be chronic pain. It could be fatigue. It could be numbness. It's at the level of the body. So what's really important is to build awareness around the sensations of these emotions for you to be able to fully integrate it. If you're up for it, Jay, we could quickly try a very brief exercise so that lawyers have something very credible to take away from the segment, right? Yeah. So, Jay, I want you to, let's say, think of any issue that you feel has been unresolved in your mind. You don't need to tell me what it is. Just think of the recent past. Sorry?
Thank God.
Thank God, yeah. Yeah, that is, if you sign up for my coaching, I will ask you. But in this episode, we can let that be.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Just recollect that event in your mind. You don't need to explain to me what the particulars are, right? And just close your eyes, Jay, and tell me, what are you feeling? What are the emotions around this event? What is coming up for you when you think about it?
Well, I can see nothing. That's what I feel.
Yeah. So you may not be able to see anything, but are you able to feel the emotion?
Yes. A little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Can you take a few deep belly breaths? Just take a few deep breathe in and breathe out. And just try to locate your awareness around where is the sensation of that emotion. You may be feeling it in the chest, you may feel some kind of a tightness on your neck, or it could be anywhere. You could be feel tingling in your stomach. It could be anything.
Something in the chest, probably the heartbeat.
Okay, in the chest. Okay.
Hmm.
So can you just deeply breathe into where this sensation is showing up in your body? Just 3-4 deep breaths.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the chest. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Now, when you're deeply breathing into the sensation of these emotions, how are you feeling? You may not feel an immediate 360-degree change because, of course, the very first time we're doing it and it's a very short sequence. But are you feeling any difference at all?
I feel I'm a little more relaxed than what I was before. Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is one way of being present to your emotions. Most of the times we get so stuck in making the emotion go away, we tend to suppress it, numb it, or distract ourselves from difficult emotions because we don't know how to cope in a healthy way. Most of us aren't trained in it, right? So this one very simple tool of just staying present to what is coming up at the sensation and the level of the body is something that will help you instantly relax to some of the things that seem very stressful to the mind. So, but to do this very effectively, you need to keep building on your body awareness,
Hmm.
and that really helps you integrate and neutralize difficult emotions. So, yes, these are the three tips for lawyers. Please don't normalize stress. Be true and honest about where you are and do what it takes to get to a better place. And the second point is to be a little more kind and compassionate to your own self if you have a very highly critical inner voice. And the third point is just to build some more body awareness. And it is a bit of a challenge for lawyers because we are in a profession that has a heavy cognitive load, right? So it's very easy to be cut off your feelings, emotions, and the sensitivity of the body. So if you can do practices like mindfulness meditation, so many others, if you check that up on the internet, you will get a lot of options and come back to the level of the body and the sensitivity of the body and learn to neutralize difficult emotions at the level of the body. It greatly helps with mitigating chronic stress.
Wow. So, going ahead with our next question, there is cutthroat competition that you see in law firms today, and there are these insane deadlines as well. So, do you think it's high time that law firms also engage or hire services of life coach or get them on board permanently? And what
Yeah.
about counsel practice in constitutional courts or other courts? Do you think that the bar council need to intervene and do something about it?
Okay, Jay, as a life coach, the only answer I would say is a big yes, right? I will scream from the top of the roof and say yes, there is high time that we have well-being policies in place for lawyers and really have permanent coaches onboarded in law firms so that you're normalizing wellness instead of stress. And if you look at a lot of companies abroad, there are coaches and companies that specialize, particularly in executive coaching for lawyers and wellness coaching for lawyers. And of course, the research, like I mentioned, is replete with how coaching can really be helpful for lawyers. And also, sometimes there's a stigma around seeking help in this profession, right? So somehow, coaching has managed to make itself a very glamorized industry. It's relatively nascent, somewhere started in the 1980s, but it's been popularized by so many celebrities and global personalities that somehow it's now become a badge of honor to work with life coach. So lawyers who are particularly worried about the stigma factor can do great, in fact, by working with a coach. And Jay, like you rightly said, it's about time where law firms as well as bar councils also take the initiative for lawyers. And in this regard, I would like to, in fact, acknowledge Ketan and company. They've come up with a people well-being framework, which I think is a commendable step in terms of their employee well-being. And maybe there are more firms that have followed suit, but I'm not aware. And when firms actually put practices like this in place, it speaks volumes about how much they truly care. And then employee retention is no more such a difficult game that founders and partners are playing. And at this juncture, I would also like to acknowledge my own firm, which is Dandapani Associates, where I'm a transaction lawyer. I associated with the firm in 2017. And the 7 hour litigation schedule felt like a complete grind to me, and I really couldn't sustain the practice. But the fact is that I had the freedom to walk up to my seniors and say, you know what, I love law and I love the practice, but this is not working for me. Is there something that you can figure out for me? And ever since I've become a transaction lawyer with a firm that focuses more on drafting and research, generally transaction law is a little unheard of in Kerala, where advocates are expected to be in courts till evening. So the fact that I had the freedom to work out something of my own in such a traditional law firm that is of great repute, again spoke volumes about how much they truly cared, right? And I'm still associated with the firm since so many years. So I think whether or not you onboard coaches, the first step would be for the seniors and the senior associates and founders of the firm to truly care and empathize with the unique individual struggles of the associate and do what best they can to provide a solution.
Fantastic. So, ma'am, lastly, you specialize in emotional well-being. So, could you please elaborate and shed some light on your area of specialization, emotional wellness or well-being?
Thank you so much for that question, Jay. It gives me a space to talk about my work too. So, whether you call it emotional wellness, emotional well-being, or mental health, my forte is in helping or facilitating individuals and professionals mitigate chronic stress and anxiety. And I have a three-step coaching framework which may sometimes span a couple of weeks, depending on where the client is. And most fundamentally, I take them through stages like self awareness, self regulation, self empowerment. Self awareness is where we really look at the root cause of what might be a stressor. Whatever you're calling is the problem is simply a symptom, but you need to look at what is the underlying root cause in the subconscious that's actually creating this as a problem for you. So that step is very crucial. Then we look at self regulation, where we learn how to neutralize difficult emotions as a level of the body. And then there's self empowerment, where we look at what are the behavioral changes you can create to get to the destination that you like. So it's been a while since I've been coaching, and I'm very happy to see some of the breakthroughs my clients have made.
That's wonderful, ma'am. So, any parting words that you wish to say before we wrap this segment? This has to be one of the most important topics that we've covered so far. I have been recording sessions since June 2021, and we are in 2024. Almost, I think we've been doing this for the last 3.5 years, but it has to be the most important topic. And talking about mental health, emotional well-being, which has not been covered so far. So, anything that you wish to say to all the viewers, young lawyers, law students who are watching this? Any valuable tips from your end as parting words?
Yes, Jay. Firstly, it's a big thank you to you because you were open enough to us exploring this idea in on your platform, and you were so enthusiastic and so supportive all the way through the process. So thank you for being a great host. The one thing I'd like to tell all the lawyers watching this episode is to spend some time in figuring out who you really are at the most fundamental level and what drives you and what sparks that mojo in life, right? When you are a lawyer or when you choose some very externally validating conventional professions, we tend to get so identified with that role we are playing. We forget that no matter you're the best lawyer, that still takes care of just one facet of your life. There's so much more to who you are. So the more you explore that and the more you pursue that, naturally the happiness quotient is going to go high up. And you, Jay, I know are one of the examples of people who've done that. You're a litigating lawyer, but I know you have a wide area of interest and you're actually investing time in all of that. So you really are a perfect example of how lawyers can be and should be if their happiness matters to them. So that's one thing I really like to remind all the lawyers, that there's so much more to life and it's worth exploring what really sets their heart and soul on fire and really having the clarity and conviction to pursue it. And thank you to you, Jay. Those would be my last words. Like I said, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure coming here and sharing my thoughts. And I feel very wonderful. So thank you so much. And your channel, I must say that it's like a seven-course buffet that you give lawyers. So such exotic dishes to pick and choose from, so many different topics that you cover. And it's done in such a succinct way, very relatable to all of us. And I really hope your channel grows and leaps and bounds even more and ultimately would become that one-stop destination for all lawyer information. I clearly see it going there. Congratulations with the great work you've done. And thank you so much for having me on board.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am, for taking our time for doing this extraordinary, stellar, brilliant session, a very important one. All this while, we've been covering a lot of legal topics, and endeavor on the Virtual Amicus has always been to solve legal issues, complex legal issue problems, and do it in the simplest of the ways so that it's easy for everyone to understand and comprehend. So, after a long time, we've chosen a topic not about law, but around law. And it is also one of a very important topic that we've covered so far. So grateful that we could get hold of an expert in this field, and the expert could take out time and do this on our channel. To all the viewers who are watching, our email is mentioned on the channel. In case if you still have any queries, feel free to write to us. We'll be more than happy to assist you on this. And so it's goodbye for now. Next episode is on its way. Thank you so much once again for your time and patience.
Thank you.